This is the Lake Tahoe Aquatic Invasive Species Public Forum. My name is Pete Brumis. I work for the Tahoe Resource Conservation District, and I'm also part of the Lake Tahoe Aquatic Invasive Species Coordination Committee. So, without further ado, I would like to announce our first speaker, Steve Chilton from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
The University of California, Davis and the University of Nevada, Reno have been a great help to us through their research departments. In fact, we couldn't have gotten to the point we are without them. Their work with Asian clams, aquatic weeds, warm water fish, and quagga mussel research has set the bar for other like research across the country. There's folks that are looking at these people, New York, in the Great Lakes areas as to what they're doing and somewhat following their lead.
In order for us to effectively manage invasive species, we need to understand the process of invasion. And as you can see here, that this process is not a single event. It involves multiple stages, and they're all linked together. So of course, for us to manage invasive species, the best thing to do is to not let them get here, so they're never transported. But once they get here, there are stages of establishment, spread, and impact. And what I want to point out is that every single point of these stages is an opportunity for us to prevent it to get to the next step. So I'm going to give you 3 examples in Lake Tahoe. Steve has pointed out that quagga mussel is not here, so it's a potential invader. So it's still right up here. Existing invaders that we have is Asian clams and warm water fish that I'm going to talk about today. What we look at is calcium level. Remember, I was mentioning that there are higher elevated calcium level in the clam beds, and this is what we've found in the area. This orange area is showing that it's kind of the level where potentially quagga mussels can establish, and they would much prefer in this red zone. So you can see some of our areas do fall into that range. So what we did is, in theory, they might be able to live here, so we want to see realistically, can they? So we went to Lake Mead, took a couple of quagga mussels, brought them to Reno, not anywhere near here, and then we went to Tahoe Keys and got a bunch of Tahoe Keys water and then tried to grow quagga mussels in them. And believe it or not, they are very hard to babysit. So we were only managed to keep 8 of them in 8 different buckets, and 86% of them survived, showing positive growth. So positive growth is all over the 1-to-1 line. And also within all that, they're showing different stage of development. And most importantly, you can see that some of them start to generate sperms and oocytes, so which means that they can potentially reproduce.
What we did was, through the stakeholder process and public input, forums that we held in Truckee over the summer, is put out a whole menu of kind of program options to see where people were leaning towards, what type of program, how protective they wanted to be. And we really got the sense that people wanted a protective program. And so some of the things that ultimately we could be looking at is mandatory inspections. Different things that we could look at is a banding and or sticker program. Starting with a sticker program is probably where we'll end up going, ultimately going to a banding program, because it kind of paves the way for a reciprocity. Based on available resources, banding would probably have to be kind of in a phased approach. Other things that we're looking at are inspections and inspection locations, kind of looking logistically at whether those happen at the ramp or whether they happen at centralized locations. Same thing with decontaminations. Do those happen at centralized locations or are they privatized? Fines and enforcement, that happens through that ordinance process with the local jurisdictions. Restricted access could come in different forms in terms of, gates, restricted shoreline access, hours of operations, things like that. Program fees could be, annual fees, per launch fees. So these are kind of the things we're in the stage of working out the specific details of those. We want to continue education and outreach and definitely want to continue AIS monitoring and potentially even look at control programs, which could be to control the Asian clam population in Donner. One thing that we have recently received another round of funding from the Truckee River Fund, so we will be moving this forward in 2012.
So what is the Tahoe Keepers movement? It's not just a simple program, get your boat inspected. It's more than that. It's a campaign to encourage the paddling community to participate in the inspection process and provides an overall resource to help paddlers prevent the transport of aquatic invasive species. So what is a Tahoe Keeper? A Tahoe Keeper, most simply, is a registered boater who has obtained self-inspection and decontamination training, but it is also trying to create a boater who's committed to being a steward of Tahoe's waters. So why is it important for paddlers to join the stewardship community? Well, first of all, it assists paddlers in complying with local and state regulations. There's no particular regulation that says you have to self-inspect your boat, but there are regulations that say it is illegal to transport AIS, or aquatic invasive species. Therefore, by going through the self-inspection training program, you are helping yourself to comply with those regulations. And in addition to paddlers being able to protect Lake Tahoe's resources, it also provides them an opportunity to protect their own resources, which is this amazing ability to launch at almost any point around the lake. It's really important to the working group that access to these dispersed locations remain open.
So what does it mean to self-inspect? Well, very simply, it's our mantra, clean, drain, and dry. For non-motorized watercraft, self-inspection and decontamination is easy, it's simple, it doesn't take a lot of time, and really anyone can do it as long as you take the time every time and also educate yourself on what the risks are and what you're looking for. So to help out with the self-inspection and to inform everyone on what that actually means, we developed an online training protocol which we launched in mid-August. So anyone can go to this site and receive the self-inspection and decontamination training. Also in the training, like I mentioned, is a background on what the threat of invasive species are, but then also why do we want you to do the clean, drain, and dry? Obviously, it's to protect our resources at Lake Tahoe, but we also want to make sure that you know how to comply with local and state law. Kind of no surprises, right? And then after the training, there's a short test to make sure you paid attention to the training, and then a registration process. So why would we register the boaters? For one, it's to confirm that you were paying attention and that you understand the material. Also, we want to incorporate in this program a way for the user who's taken their time to be an informed boater. We want to recognize those users, and we want there to be an incentive within the community that, hey, you're a Tahoe keeper, so am I.
These efforts focused in the Tahoe Keys and in Emerald Bay, and we were really busy out there in both places this past year. The Tahoe Keys project was designed to test management techniques for plant control in the Tahoe Keys lagoons and in similar aquatic environments, marinas and things like that. We deployed bottom barriers in 6 locations throughout the Keys lagoons, and we also conducted a pretty cool dye dissipation study. For management technique research, we deployed a couple of different kinds of barriers. We deployed synthetic barriers and we deployed jute barriers. Synthetic barriers are basically, well, both the jute and the synthetic barriers are gas permeable barriers that will block the sunlight to prevent aquatic plant growth. This slide shows the deployment of a synthetic barrier from a barge in one of the ends of the lagoons in the Tahoe Keys. That red dot in the middle is actually the diver's helmet. So we would deploy these barriers down to the bottom. The diver would put them down over the weeds if they were there. This shows deployment of the jute material. So the deployment of jute is a little bit different than the synthetic barriers. Here you'll notice that there's actually nothing that is in the jute to weight it down. So the jute material will float on top of the surface for a little while, and then as it gets wet, it will slowly sink, and we use sandbags then to weight it down. The jute barriers will remain in the Tahoe Keys until they decompose. We're estimating that to be about 18 months or so. So we're curious to see if it kills the plants underneath. Mostly in the Tahoe Keys we have Eurasian water milfoil. There's also some curly leaf pondweed and other native plants there as well, but the material covers them all. Now this is a pretty cool slide. I don't know if you can see it very well, but here on the left-hand side we have the barrier material down, and you can see the very straight line on the right-hand side where plants have grown and no barriers are deployed there.
Okay, so some numbers from this past season. About 14,000 unique vessels visited the lake this past year. This is pretty consistent with last year. It's relatively flat, the number of boats that came, or the number of unique boats that came. 7,600 inspections conducted this past season, which again is about the same as last year. And over 4,800 decontaminations were performed. That's a 300% increase of the 1,200 we did last year. So we were very busy. This huge increase in decontamination is mainly due to our protocols. We had changes in our protocols where we needed to decon more of the boats. And basically 62% of all the boats coming through the inspection stations needed to have an decontamination conducted. We sold 7,000 Tahoe-only stickers. This is about a 12% increase over last year, and we kind of expected this. A lot of boats from the previous year that were Tahoe in and outs, which is the sticker we use for boats coming and going from different lakes. So the boats that came that had the Tahoe in and out sticker and they were sealed, that they wanted to switch over to the Tahoe only sticker this year. So we did expect that increase.
One thing that we do right now, and that various speakers have alerted to tonight, now Kim talked about it, Steve also talked about it, and Christine mentioned collaboration with scientists as well, is that we have been doing a lot of coordination and collaboration with programs, and that's something we really need to look to increasing in the future, and this is one of the things that we're really going to focus on. And there's several different levels of collaboration that we're doing. There's the regional kind of collaboration. It's only by taking this more regional approach that we'll be able to take care of Tahoe. Additionally, there's coordination with the western states. It's something that Steve Chilton has been doing in his role, is coordinating with the Western Regional Panel, which is a group of federal and state agencies that get together to talk about aquatic invasive species issues across the West. As well as we also coordinate on the national level, and again, Steve has been a representative for us at the National Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force. This is a task force at the highest levels back in Washington, D.C. This provides funding to programs around the West, as well as a coordination between the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association and the Fish and Wildlife Service back in Washington, who are the leads across the country for aquatic invasive species management. So in addition to that, nationally, we also have been reaching out and receiving visitors from all over the country. We've received visitors to come look at our program from Maine, who've been interested in what we're doing. We've also had visitors from New York State, particularly Lake George, New York, has a very similar program or a very similar environment to what we have, and they'd like to work on establishing a bigger program there. They sent representatives out. I recently went back there with in collaboration with some of our researchers to talk to them about what we've done and also learn from them about what they're doing. So why is this important? Why am I even bothering talking about collaboration? I think it really is important because, as I mentioned earlier, if we think about Tahoe as isolated from everybody else, I don't think in the long run we're going to be able to win this battle against aquatic invasive species. And so it's something that we all have been doing and we will continue to do so in the future. An important part of the continual improvement process is feedback from the public. We really want your feedback. It's important to us because the reason that we have this program is to protect this lake and to serve the public. So it's important that we hear from you.